don't normally motovlog, but I'm going to make an exception today because I am beyond excited about this new bike. So let's get out on the trail and I'll tell you all about it. I've been trying out the dirt bike thing since about August. My next door neighbor called me up out of the blue and gave me the opportunity to come ride with them. And I hadn't rode anything off-road in probably close to 15 years. And I said, I don't even have a bike. And he said, oh, that's okay. I have two Hondas. I've got a 450 and I've got a 150. And you're welcome to ride the 150. It's small, but you're already used to riding a Grom, so you should be fine on a small bike. We went to a local riding area, and this was really my first adult experience on a dirt bike. I did have a 1982 Honda XR80 when I was in middle school, but that was so long ago. We just rode that around in the field and the woods beside our house, just did some trails, so I wouldn't really consider that a proper dirt bike experience. So I got on the 150, and I was absolutely shocked at how much power this little bike had. When we got back from riding that day, I bought the 150 and rode it for about a month, and it really helped me just to get my bearings on a dirt bike. So I brought it here to Wellsville, and it was so surreal being back here. I spent almost every weekend here riding three-wheelers and four-wheelers. I found out quickly that the dirt bike was a whole different story than being on a four-wheeler, especially in a rugged environment like this. Because the bike was so small, I had to reach really far down when I stood to ride. It just got sketchy. The front end wanted to wash out, and it just made me work so much harder to ride that bike and keep it under control. I just realized that it wasn't the right fit for me. When I was out here one weekend with the little 150, I ran into a group of guys and I was riding with them. One of the guys named Marcus was riding a 2025 KTM 300XC-W, and he asked me if I would trade and he could try out the little 150. He said, when you get on this bike, you are going to fall in love with this thing. You're going to want one. There we go. The price tag on the KTM 300XC-W is somewhere north of about $12,000, and I thought, there is no way. That is so far off in the distance for me right now. But a guy can dream, right? So I rode the bike for about an hour in the trails, climbed up some hills, down hills, and it was everything that he said it was. I had him take my picture on the bike, which you can see here. I sent it to my wife on text message and said, look at the bike. This is the bike that I need. And she said, someday, honey. Shortly after that, I put the 150 up for sale. I just needed to get a bigger bike, and riding that KTM was reinforcement of that. My neighbor let me ride his 450 in the interim, and oh my goodness, I can't even explain to you how much power that machine has. It was awesome. In the rock sections out here, the 450 got really hot. When you got into the slow technical stuff, it got to the point of overheating. And I know you can put a fan on it and fix all that, but it just didn't make sense to buy a bike and put a bunch of money into it and try to turn it into something that it's just not made for. I kept on the lookout for a good dirt bike, and in the meantime, I rode my buddy Bob's 400EX four-wheeler, and I was like, man, I at least got to just get another quad. I picked up a 2014 Honda 400EX, and that was the last model year that Honda produced a sport quad, and I love my four-wheeler. I am so happy to be back on four wheels, and I will always have one. That being said, I didn't want to give up on the dirt bike. One evening, my wife and I were watching YouTube, and we stumbled upon a video in our feed that was entitled Graham Jarvis, Hard Enduro. Never heard that name before, so we clicked on it. And to my surprise, here is this 50-year-old guy on a 300 two-stroke dirt bike in trails, climbing hills, and going up through these real technical rock sections. And that moment kind of changed everything for me. that is exactly the type of riding that we have been doing out here for years on four-wheelers. I didn't even know this space existed. I didn't know hard enduro was a term. I didn't know there was such a thing as competition in the exact same type of riding we're doing here. I kept watching Hard Enduro, and the more that I watched these types of races, the more this is almost what I've been training for and didn't even know it. I picked up this 300XC-W off Facebook Marketplace, and I had a certain budget set aside, and it fell right into the budget. It was such a blessing to get this bike, and the guy was amazing. He was absolutely 5-star review. He was super cool to deal with, and that's not always the case on Facebook, so if you're watching this, thank you. So what's the goal? The goal is to learn a new skill. I've climbed all these hills out here. Now I want to learn to try to do it on 2 wheels instead of 3 or 4. The skill set to ride a dirt bike is completely different. I'm going to come out here as often as I can, work pivot turns, learn body position, ride trails, anything that I can do to try to get used to riding this bike and go towards that goal of seeing if a hard enduro is even something that I can accomplish. All right, well, there's my first line change as a wannabe hard enduro rider. Let's rock back a little here and see if we can't lunge this thing up over it. Look at that. That's what watching YouTube does for you, folks. Try a technique out for the first time and have it work. That's pretty fulfilling. Not gonna lie. I am under no delusions that I'm going to ride like Graham Jarvis or Johnny Walker or all these guys that are pro hard enduro guys. At 51 years old, I'm not going to make a career and go ride for Red Bull. This has been a hobby for me my whole life, and to just have a point to it, to learn new skills, almost like martial arts. If you want to perfect something, you learn the technique and then perfect it by doing it 10,000 times. The same thing goes with this. This would be martial arts training on a dirt bike. Learning pivot turns, learning to track straight up a hill, learning to climb, learning to go through technical sections, and just doing that all on this 2-wheeled platform is just something that I'm super excited about. I've rode something since I was 6 years old. My dad brought home our first 3-wheeler. I've never stopped wanting to be out here riding. So that's the journey. I want to enter a hard enduro race and give it a shot. I think that too many people give up when they start getting into their late 40s and early 50s. I think this is just the beginning. I've learned all these things throughout my life. Now it's time to bring them all together and start this next chapter. I don't think you age out of dreams, passions, or adventure. And this is mine. Welcome to the Hard Enduro Project. I want to give a big shout out before we wrap up the video to my friends at Joe Bottom's Campground. If you need a good place to park your truck and trailer, your 4-wheeler, UTV, dirt bike,
There's trail access right out of the parking lot. It's secure, and it's a bunch of really great people, all riders just like us. So go to their Facebook page and give them a like and a follow, and I will see you guys out in the trails.